Welcome back to Encouraging Things. A while ago I came up with the idea of challenging myself to make the most complicated thing I could think of using only parts that I found at the Dollar Tree. I'm not entirely certain where it came from, but the idea of a record player or a turntable came to mind. And so, having found some 45s at a local thrift store, I set to work in finding parts and pieces to put together to make a turntable using only parts from the Dollar Tree. Going into this project, I only had a vague idea of how turntables worked, and I found out that they use a worm gear in order to translate the speed of a motor into the speed of a turntable, 45 rotations per minute. And I'd originally decided to go with a spring that I found from a little jumping spider from the Dollar Tree, but it didn't really work out as well as I'd hoped. And then one day I stumbled upon a toy hand drill, and inside the package was a tiny screw. But the Dollar Tree doesn't have a lot of things with big gears in it, and so it took a little bit. But the spiralizer that I found was a perfect pitch match for the screw from the construction kit. Now, in order to get the screw part onto the motor, I had to figure out a way to connect the two together. Luckily, in the hand drill set, there was a small plastic drill with a square end, and the injection point for the mold was right in the middle, and just the right size to put the axle from the motor. And then the other end fit perfectly inside the screw. So all I had to do was cut the end off, and it was a perfect fit. In order to power the turntable, I had several options to choose from, but I decided to go with the remote control box for the small toy car where I originally got the motor. The reason for this is because all of the parts came out of the box, and then the loose metal connectors would be easy to solder to if needed. Throughout the process of the build, I would stop to test each component to make sure it worked the way I was hoping it would. With the motor and screw bit, it was a bit wobblier than I expected, but it didn't slip. So now all I had to do was find a way to secure the other end in order to keep it from wobbling around. Once I had all the parts put together and secured, it was time to test the worm gear for the first time. Now, the plastic of the screw and the injection molding that created it weren't exactly even, and so there were some burrs on it that were catching on the gear, but it did work, and that was a start. Throughout the process, I did go through several battery packs to try to figure out which one would work best for the project. In the end, because I only needed one battery, I decided to make my own, and it worked. Mostly. The tone arm, which in my mind is one of the most complicated pieces of the turntable, was actually the first thing I made, and one of the easiest, simply because the parts I had available made it easy. I made this bit so it could turn one way, and then turn at a 90-degree angle the other way, and it worked out really well. For the length of the tone arm, I needed something light and easy to cut, and I found some paper straws at the Dollar Tree that worked perfectly. During my testing, I created 3 different versions of the cartridge for this particular turntable. The first one in the original was based off of a design that I learned about in a show called The Secret Life of Machines, hosted by Tim Hunkin and Rick Scarrod.
When I vibrate one speaker, the other one vibrates too.
The second tone arm I designed also came from The Secret Life of Machines and uses a carbon granule microphone attached to a speaker, but still didn't give any sound that you could really hear.
We can reproduce this quite easily using a coffee jar top. I've put a couple of bits of silver paper in here to form a contact, and connecting up to a loudspeaker and a battery. If I fill this with the granules, you'll hear it begin to crackle. Then fit a diaphragm, which is just a piece of plastic. If I cup my hands around it and speak quite loudly, you should be able to hear Bell's voice-shaped currents coming out of the speaker.
And finally, the last one was the simple pin and cup method that gives an analog sound and works really well. For the original cartridge build, I took a couple of speakers out of these fire truck toys. For the needle, I needed some wire that was strong but springy, and it turned out that the antenna for the control box for the wireless car worked really well for this, and had a convenient bend in it already. And due to how unstable the entire build was and how wobbly the record was, I knew I needed a tone arm that was really light. So I brought out a kitchen scale and decided to weigh it. At 6 grams, the weight of the cartridge would actually tilt the record and pull it off the stand it was on. So I created a counterweight and brought the weight back down to 3 grams. To mount the sound speaker, I took the advice of Bill Making Stuff and used some EVA foam in order to connect the speaker to the piece of plastic I was adhering it to. During the process of mounting the speaker, I also took the time to wire in a switch, which I also took from the small remote control car that we've been using for the rest of the build. Now that I'd put everything together, it was time to give it a proper test. The first test didn't go over so well, for a combination of reasons. So swapping out to a new record with wider grooves, as it was a single rather than having multiple songs on the same side, and adjusting the worm gear a little bit, I was able to get it to run a little better. So how did it turn out? Well, it works. It was a lot of fun challenging myself and putting this together out of the parts that I found. And the things I have left over can be used for other projects. So once again, I would like to encourage all of you to challenge yourselves to find a project that you enjoy or something that you think that you can make and put it together and see how far you get. And once again, I would like to thank you all for stopping by and thank you for watching.